Vitaly, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. His stay in the Ukrainian capital, and with the diplomats of a NATO member. The American Minister of the Army in the afternoon had penetrated the Ukrainian Strait, Lime and with Pashik and Shlyak in the implementation of the plan prepared in the White House. Lyaka their European in the Russian missile threat. That Russia is on missiles at such a pace, soon Ukrainian systems against windy defense will not be able to withstand their onslaught. And with a year of pit missile strike of Russia, maybe Ukraine, Europe. European firm an American official to the argument of Russia's buildup of a missile drop is one of the most important in order for Ukraine to be European allies from Trump's capitulative mind and so-called plan. I am for information from the Rich Gerald, written by a White House official, Russian Special Envoy Kirill Dmitriev, and written by President Putin's Assistant for Foreign Policy, Yuri Ushakov. Earlier, the Americans themselves sued Russia for the pace of rocket technology and Shukaly Shlyak in order to, among other things, waste the dumping of Ukraine for strikes on the Russian factories of the whiskey fishing complex. ttPPR missile of Russia stands as an argument for Ukraine not to have an hour of tormenting such minds in the presidential administration from the received states forever, to put Sumny sovereignty and away from the survival of the yak of an independent power. On the logic of Dan, and the rich experts at the defense really says that Russia has significantly shot down missiles and overgrown. It is possible to accumulate their nomenclature in the warehouses of the dump. Trying for discounts can really be provided a road to the Myra Ugadi. I'm not for the European continent lime with the dumping of the Russian Federation. Not greedy that Russian President Putin and his official take the so-called Polar Plan seriously. And we have also been using Mabuda's plan as a tool of the Kremlin itself in order to impose sanctions from the United States against the Russian naphtha giants Lukoil and Rosneft. Another important tool for replenishing the Russian temple budget, and this is the mantle of the President of Russia, Putin. Girlfriend, it is obvious that Putin Nikola is not the weather, and with the so-called compromise plan. The American-Ukrainian delegation at Geneva and the special representative of the president with the Steve Witz received in the state. She arrives to the Russian capital firm the peacekeeping mission, Spitkaya is not programmed in the dacha. And Russia's guilt against Ukraine will end. The streamers of Russian missiles are elected with the rank of the received states. And the ranks reveal that Russia yaks to leave the farmlands, no one will propane a scattered warehouse of dropped forces. Then they will not pretend in a short hour to blackmail Europe with their missile potential, and with such a rank extort new political acts by threatening missile strikes on European capitals. And it is obvious that the Kremlin still has the very fact of dropping Russia and the appearance of the Russian regime in and Sprat missiles delivered to European places, not respecting the anti-wind defense systems, is really being Vrahovivatsia by an enviable politician. In Moscow, they are not blackmailing and extorting new political acts and practical sovereignty is no longer the Tilka of Ukraine. The Zahid of Ukraine. Well, just on the situation with the period of politics. In 2020 years of growth on the attack on Ukraine, the Ministry of Zakordny Certificates of the Russian Federation, wrapped up to the Sovereign Department with the received states of the Minister of Zakordny Certificates of Ukraine, a member of NATO. And you are so famous for the Statute of the Beer Atlantic Union that it was clearly stated in it that even before the alliance, the stakes of the Radian Republic, including Ukraine and Georgia, would not be accepted. It was about NATO and the sovereignty of the ruling members. And I can't prescribe another Ukraine to the Beer Atlantic Union, not to what they themselves do not adore, but to what is the political will of the Russian political roots began with Putin. Then an extra president with Joe Biden received in the state, lost to Putin even before the European impudence that Russia cannot dictate Ukraine as a NATO member, Yaki decisions to praise them. In Moscow, no one took respect seriously. And not till to the fact that President Putin has a fierce 2020 other lesson, having found fault against neighboring Ukraine, but also to the fact that you are even before the fact that NATO Ukraine is a nobleman of the Zmin in the statute of the organization, and adoption of up to in the pegged Radian republics, both President Putin and the Minister of the Russia's Lavrov. And Russian officials are still lying. Without such, there can be no alleged guilt against Ukraine. With such a rank, not of Ukrainian, but of Zahid sovereignty, you overestimate the ambit and then Russian foreign policy. And with such a rank, yes, helping to blame Ukraine, NATO members, politicians in surrender from Moscow to the mind of the threat of missile guilt. And that argument has its own private pardon with European officials. Tomorrow, about public applications and pre-election rallies, you can arrest politicians and lasty ttVitaly in their Ukraine. The gentry of the authorities, and both with the President of Russia and Putin on his minds, so that the torture of the missile and for the Europeans does not pose a threat. And to reveal a rich, serious problem, and on the May button, none of the explanatory plan of Donald Trump agrees on the topic of the channel. Subscribe to it, subscribe to Social on the Patreon channel, and help develop these resources. The sponsorship function in YouTube itself.